The deployment was called a signal, a message written in stealth wings and afterburner thunder. 10 F-35s, the most advanced fighters in the U.S. arsenal, were stationed not in Europe or the Pacific, but in Puerto Rico. The official mission was to fight drug cartels, but the truth was a declaration. The U.S. had chosen to treat cartels not just as criminals, but as military adversaries worthy of fifth-generation firepower. Drug trafficking routes slice through the Caribbean like veins, feeding poison into the American body. Go-fast boats, semi-submersibles, and even fishing vessels disguised under sun-bleached paint, all carrying cocaine, fentanyl, and methamphetamine. For decades, the U.S. relied on Coast Guard cutters and surveillance aircraft. But the cartels adapted faster. They invested in quicker hulls, encrypted communications, and new routes. Every time the U.S. raised the bar, traffickers found a way to slip under it. That's why the government made a decision that felt almost surreal: to bring stealth jets designed for wars against peer nations into the cat-and-mouse struggle against narcotics. Puerto Rico was chosen for a reason. Its air bases sit within striking distance of the Mona Passage and the Caribbean Sea, a maritime funnel through which countless tons of narcotics move north. Positioning F-35s there cuts the response time from hours to minutes. Instead of scrambling from Florida or Texas, pilots can launch directly into the heart of trafficking lanes. Geography becomes a weapon, an island fortress, armed not with colonial cannons, but with radar-absorbing fighters. But why the F-35 specifically? Because drug cartels no longer operate like small-time smugglers. They are hybrid organizations running billion-dollar networks that rival state intelligence services. They hire ex-military personnel, deploy drones for reconnaissance, and in some cases, enjoy safe harbor from governments that see profit in looking the other way. Against such foes, surveillance planes and patrol ships can be too slow, too visible, and too predictable. The F-35 brings something cartels cannot counter: stealth that makes it invisible until it is already overhead, sensors that can detect even the faint heat signature of a hidden engine, and the ability to coordinate with naval and intelligence assets in real time. When a go-fast boat races across open water, the fighter can track it and direct lethal force with precision impossible to outrun. This decision carries enormous psychological weight. For years, the U.S. labeled drug cartels as criminal enterprises. Now, by deploying frontline stealth fighters, Washington elevates them to the level of military enemies. That shift changes the rules of engagement. When a cartel vessel ignores commands to stop, it is no longer a police chase. It becomes a battlefield encounter.
Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. So I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out.
The F-35 can deliver precision strikes that sink vessels before they reach shore, severing supply chains in one decisive flash of fire. To the cartels, this is not law enforcement. It is war. The justification goes beyond interdiction. U.S. officials have pointed to the destabilizing effect of cartels across Latin America, mass killings in Mexico, corruption hollowing out Central American states, and the alleged support from Venezuela's Maduro government, accused of sheltering traffickers in exchange for political survival. By stationing F-35s in Puerto Rico, the U.S. signals deterrence not just to cartels, but to state actors who might enable them. The fighters serve as a visible reminder that the Caribbean is not a sanctuary for narco-politics. Any regime that aids traffickers risks drawing the attention of an aircraft built to penetrate the defenses of the most advanced militaries in the world. Critics call it an escalation, and they are not wrong. Deploying stealth fighters against drug smugglers is unprecedented, but escalation is exactly the point. For years, interdiction campaigns seized tons of narcotics, only to watch production rise higher the next season. Cartels operate with an industrial scale of resilience. Sink one boat, 10 more launch. To disrupt that cycle, the U.S. is now applying overwhelming force. Instead of reacting to cartel moves, Washington intends to dominate the battle space, denying traffickers the freedom to maneuver. In psychological terms, it is a risk calculation at a national scale. Better to act with shocking power now than to continue losing the endless war of attrition. The F-35s do not operate alone. They are part of a layered strategy. Navy ships patrol choke points. Coast Guard cutters seize vessels once tracked. Satellites and intelligence drones feed targeting data into the F-35's sensor fusion system. When one fighter takes off, it does not simply fly a mission. It becomes the nerve center of a larger kill chain, directing assets across the sea and sky. This integration is what makes the deployment revolutionary. A cartel boat may think it is running free, but in reality, it is already inside a web woven by stealth jets, warships, and satellites. Escape becomes statistically impossible. This decision also carries enormous psychological weight. Cartels thrive on reputation. They market themselves as untouchable, daring governments to challenge them. When videos spread of cartel convoys rolling openly through Mexican towns, the message is clear: we own this territory. But reputation cuts both ways. The presence of F-35s in Puerto Rico sends a counter-narrative. It shows that no matter how fast, no matter how secretive, traffickers cannot outpace American reach. Even the most advanced cartels look primitive when measured against fifth-generation jets. Fear, once a weapon wielded by cartels, becomes a weapon turned against them. Still, the cost is high. F-35 sorties burn millions in taxpayer dollars. Critics argue that deploying stealth fighters against speedboats is like swatting flies with a sledgehammer. But U.S. officials counter that the cost of inaction is higher. Thousands of deaths annually from overdoses, billions spent on law enforcement and healthcare, and the corrosive effect of cartel power on fragile democracies. In that calculation, the fighters are not extravagance, but an investment, a down payment on stability. The deployment also reshapes the identity of Puerto Rico itself. Long seen as a strategic outpost, the island now becomes the front line of a new kind of war. Its skies thunder with stealth jets, its runways crowded with machines designed to challenge China or Russia, but now tasked with confronting traffickers. For Puerto Ricans, this is a reminder of their dual role. Both U.S. citizens and residents of a territory whose geography places them at the crossroads of hemispheric struggles. The F-35s make that reality impossible to ignore. What happens next is uncertain. Cartels will adapt, as they always do. They may shift routes further south, invest in quieter semi-submersibles, or exploit new state sponsors. But the psychological line has already been crossed. By deploying stealth fighters, the U.S. demonstrated a willingness to treat cartels with the seriousness of military threats. That precedent will not vanish, even if the planes someday leave. It changes the playbook permanently. In the end, the decision is not just about jets or drugs. It is about perception. Cartels rose to power partly because they thrived in the gray zone between crime and war. By planting F-35s on Puerto Rican runways, the U.S. drags them out of that gray zone and into the harsh light of military confrontation. The rules are different now. When a cartel boat speeds through Caribbean waters, it knows that somewhere above, unseen but watching, a stealth fighter may already have it locked in its sights. That knowledge alone reshapes the game. The presence of stealth aircraft, like the F-35, close to the Caribbean, is not just another military maneuver. It is a declaration, a visible and undeniable shift in how the United States intends to confront transnational crime.
Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. So I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out.
For decades, drug cartels have thrived in the gray zones between law enforcement and diplomacy, exploiting geography, weak states, and limited resources. But with the arrival of fifth-generation fighters in Puerto Rico, the game changes completely. What was once a cat-and-mouse chase of patrol boats and Coast Guard cutters is now overshadowed by the shadow of stealth, precision, and overwhelming force. The contradiction is simple. Why use some of the most advanced aircraft in the world, jets designed for high-end warfare against peer adversaries, to fight organizations that move cocaine by boat and plane? The answer is not technological overkill, but strategic signaling. The US is declaring that cartels are no longer just criminals. They are national security threats. And threats of that magnitude invite the full spectrum of American power. Emotionally, the stakes are clear. Families across the Americas have felt the scourge of narcotics, addiction tearing communities apart, violence spilling across borders, and entire towns held hostage by cartel rule. The human cost creates urgency for measures that go beyond raids and seizures. The F-35 represents not only steel and software, but also a message of resolve, an attempt to close the space in which cartels have flourished. When people see stealth fighters on Caribbean runways, they sense that the US is prepared to take this fight to a level never seen before. The problem is clear. Traditional interdiction has limits. Coast Guard cutters can only chase so many speedboats. Surveillance planes can track flights but cannot always stop them. Intelligence networks, while vast, have struggled to keep pace with the speed and adaptability of cartels. Without escalation, the flow of drugs continues. Communities deteriorate, and US influence wanes in a region contested by rival powers. What is nearly lost is not just a battle against traffickers, but strategic ground in the Americas themselves. The solution, at least as envisioned by this deployment, is the integration of military power into counter-narcotics strategy. Stealth fighters offer persistent surveillance that can penetrate airspace undetected, precision strikes that can dismantle logistics hubs, and rapid deployment against high-value targets. The psychological effect is just as powerful as the kinetic one. Knowing that a jet invisible to radar can strike without warning forces cartels to live under constant uncertainty. This is deterrence through unpredictability, a core feature of fifth-generation air power. The Caribbean has long been a transit hub for cocaine moving north and weapons moving south. Every day, shipments flow across maritime corridors. Every delay in response allows traffickers to reinforce their networks. By stationing stealth aircraft within striking range, the US reduces reaction time from hours to minutes. The countdown effect is real. In the time it takes to refuel a speedboat, an F-35 could already be airborne, tracking, and ready to act. The flow of the narrative is clear. Hesitation is costly. Speed is survival. And the F-35 provides unmatched speed. The presence of these aircraft is not only about efficiency, but about escalation management. For adversarial states like Venezuela, which have been accused of turning a blind eye or even abetting trafficking, the message is unambiguous. The US is willing to project power directly into the region. This extends deterrence beyond cartels to any government that might calculate that Washington's attention is elsewhere. The stealth jet parked in the Caribbean is a reminder that surveillance, reach, and precision are already in place, ready to activate without buildup or warning. Operationally, the integration of stealth assets into counter-narcotics also marks a shift in doctrine. Instead of separating criminal threats from state threats, the US is blending them into a single framework of security. Cartels are treated less like gangs and more like hybrid actors, entities that destabilize states, control territory, and threaten governance. By positioning F-35s, the US indicates that it views the battle against them not as policing, but as a theater of conflict, requiring the same technological dominance that defines conventional warfare. The deterrent effect is psychological warfare as much as it is physical. Cartel leaders are used to planning around predictable patrols, bribes, and loopholes. But the uncertainty of stealth creates paranoia. Every airstrip, every convoy, every meeting becomes a potential target. The inability to detect or anticipate stealth surveillance forces adaptation at a high cost. In the calculation of risk, the balance shifts toward hesitation, caution, and a reduced operational tempo. This erosion of confidence is itself a weapon. The deployment of F-35s to Puerto Rico is not a symbolic gesture. It is a declaration of capability. For decades, counter-narcotics operations in the Caribbean relied on Coast Guard cutters and surveillance planes to chase down cartel speedboats. Those operations were slow, predictable, and often failed. Now, with stealth fighters parked on U.S. territory, the game has shifted. The message is unmistakable. The United States can deliver real-time airstrikes against cartel networks at sea or in the jungle with almost no warning. Cartel go-fast boats have long been the arteries of cocaine trafficking. The F-35 obliterates that dynamic. Its stealth profile allows it to fly undetected. Its sensor fusion lets pilots see small, fast-moving boats across wide stretches of ocean, and its precision strike arsenal means those boats can be neutralized instantly. No warning sirens, no escape window. Just firepower descending from the sky before the traffickers even know they are being tracked. This is not simply about technology, it is about escalation. Deploying stealth fighters for drug interdiction represents a decisive shift from law enforcement tactics to military action. It signals that trafficking networks are no longer seen as a police problem, but as a paramilitary threat demanding kinetic responses. For traffickers, the ocean has always been an escape route, a wide-open theater where speed could outrun surveillance. With F-35s overhead, that advantage disappears. Every wave, every radar return, every heat signature can now be monitored and targeted in real time. Puerto Rico's role in this transformation is central. Positioned strategically between South America and the U.S. mainland, it sits astride the main trafficking corridors. By basing F-35s there, the U.S. has placed stealth strike power directly on the smuggler's doorstep. From San Juan to the Mona Passage to the northern coast of Colombia, the jets can cover vast stretches of sea within minutes. The Caribbean is no longer a porous highway. It is a monitored kill zone. The implications extend inland. Jungle labs, hidden under canopies and guarded by cartel militias, have always been difficult to reach. Helicopters are loud, ground raids take time, and satellite intelligence often arrives too late. The F-35, linked to drones, satellites, and naval radars, can turn that intelligence into action within minutes. A thermal signature in the jungle or a convoy moving through dense canopy could be fed into the jet's targeting system and struck before the traffickers relocate. What was once untouchable terrain is now vulnerable. This shift embodies the fusion of intelligence and air power. The F-35 is not just an aircraft, it is a flying sensor hub. Its ability to absorb data from satellites, AWACS, Navy ships, and ground stations, and merge it into a single picture changes the pace of counter-narcotics warfare. Instead of waiting days to plan an operation, commanders can authorize a strike in minutes. A signal picked up by surveillance can be turned into an airstrike almost instantly. The window of cartel mobility, the time between being spotted and being hit, shrinks to near zero. That compression of time is what traffickers fear most. Their survival depends on speed and secrecy. The F-35 nullifies both. Imagine a convoy of speedboats racing at night across the Caribbean. They used to gamble on radar gaps and slow response times. Now, a stealth fighter can see them, track them, and unleash precision munitions without ever showing up on their radars. The fear is no longer getting caught, it is getting obliterated before even knowing they were detected. The psychological effect of this deployment is as important as the physical. For traffickers, the ocean once meant freedom. Now it means vulnerability. The knowledge that stealth jets can appear without warning erodes morale, increases paranoia, and forces them into riskier routes. The deterrent value alone can disrupt supply chains. And when deterrence fails, the strike capability ensures punishment is swift and undeniable. The U.S. military's readiness in Puerto Rico amplifies this effect. It is not just the jets. It is the infrastructure, the coordination with naval patrols, the integration with Coast Guard assets, and the intelligence feeds from surveillance drones. Together, these form a real-time strike network that traffickers cannot outpace. This escalation also serves as a warning to cartel leadership. The jungle labs, the coastal warehouses, the armed convoys, they are no longer safe simply because they are inland or hidden. If intelligence marks them, the strike can come. The F-35 is not limited by terrain, speed, or distance. Its multi-role design means it can hit boats, trucks, or compounds with equal precision. For traffickers who pride themselves on mobility, this is devastating. Their business model relies on rapid movement. The F-35 destroys that margin of safety. Movement is no longer protection. Speed is no longer escape. Secrecy is no longer security. Every step of the operation is under threat. From a U.S. perspective, this deployment marks a leap in counter-narcotics doctrine. No longer content with chasing shipments after they leave port. The strategy now aims to dismantle operations in real time. It integrates intelligence, surveillance, and precision strike power into a seamless chain. The F-35 is the centerpiece because it makes that integration lethal. Without it, intelligence is just information. With it, intelligence becomes action. The escalation is not hypothetical, it is already visible. Reports confirm the U.S. has stationed stealth fighters in Puerto Rico specifically to target cartel networks. This is not training, not deterrence by presence. It is preparation for strikes. The Caribbean has become the testing ground for applying fifth-generation air power against non-state actors. The broader message is unmistakable. If the U.S. is willing to use its most advanced stealth fighters against drug traffickers, it signals that no adversary, state or non-state, is beyond reach. The F-35's presence in Puerto Rico says to traffickers, "You are not safe at sea, you are not safe in the jungle, you are not safe anywhere the intelligence network can find you." This is the beginning of real-time airstrike capability against cartels. It is not about politics or promises. It is about hardware on the runway, pilots in cockpits, and weapons ready to launch. It is about shifting from pursuit to domination, from interception to annihilation. And once the first strikes happen, the psychological balance will collapse further. The traffickers will know the skies are no longer theirs to evade. The skies belong to the F-35. The deployment of F-35 stealth fighters to the Caribbean is a thunderclap announcement, a deliberate act designed to pierce through the illusions of safety that cartel leaders have long cultivated. For decades, these organizations thrived on mobility, on the belief that speedboats, hidden offshore hubs, and improvised island routes granted them immunity from conventional pursuit. That illusion has now been shattered. The message is unmistakable. The most advanced fighter jet in the world, engineered to dominate near-peer adversaries, is now being aimed squarely at transnational criminal networks. Cartel leadership, accustomed to thinking of themselves as untouchable, are forced to confront the reality that their havens are no longer beyond reach. The F-35 is not simply an aircraft. It is a system of systems, an intelligence gathering and strike platform wrapped in a cloak of invisibility. Its stealth profile allows it to surveil and track without warning. Its sensors are able to map vast areas of sea and land, detecting fast-moving vessels that once relied on speed and unpredictability to escape interdiction. When these jets lift off from Puerto Rico, they carry with them the psychological weight of inevitability. Every cartel captain on a go-fast boat, every financier hiding offshore, must now wonder if the faint noise above the horizon is a storm or an F-35 locked silently onto their coordinates. This escalation signals more than tactical adaptation. It reflects a fundamental shift from law enforcement operations, with their limitations and rules of engagement, to the raw projection of military superiority. Traditional interdiction methods were often predictable. Cartels exploited that predictability, slipping through gaps and leveraging the sluggishness of bureaucracy. By unleashing F-35s, the United States is tearing down that playbook and replacing it with overwhelming speed, stealth, and precision. It is a show of intent. No more slow chases, no more cat-and-mouse games. From now on, evasion will be answered with decisive kinetic force. The sudden arrival of American F-35 stealth fighters in the Caribbean has ripped a hole in the cartel's confidence. For years, trafficking networks operated with the belief that they could outmaneuver slow bureaucracy and the sluggish pace of traditional interdiction. Now, with cutting-edge jets circling the skies and naval assets tightening the maritime choke points, that calculation is collapsing. Reports of deadly strikes on suspected drug boats sent shockwaves through cartel command structures, triggering both panic at the top and improvisation on the ground. The message is unmistakable. The battlefield has changed, and the cartels no longer dictate the tempo. The panic filtering down the chain of command is not paranoia. It is survival instinct. In response, cartels are experimenting with countermeasures. Large narco subs and go-fast boats are being sidelined in favor of smaller, harder-to-detect vessels. Jungle paths and inland transport corridors are receiving renewed emphasis, with smugglers reverting to mule caravans, motorcycles, and hidden convoys. But every pivot reveals desperation. Moving smaller loads means more trips, more exposure, and more chances of betrayal. Inland routes, while less visible from above, come with their own dangers, rival gangs and informants. What was once a streamlined business model is fragmenting under the pressure of overwhelming force. The early evidence suggests that the cartels are entering a destabilization phase. Panic at the leadership level is compounded by confusion among rank-and-file operatives. Should they risk the seas knowing a stealth jet can appear out of nowhere? Should they trust jungle routes where ambushes and drone surveillance close the gaps? Every path forward looks narrower than the last. In criminal economies, uncertainty is poison. It breeds infighting, second-guessing, and mistrust. For Washington, this is deliberate. The deployment is not only about intercepting drugs, it is about applying psychological warfare. By showing that even well-funded cartels cannot protect their assets, the U.S. seeks to shatter the myth of invincibility that cartels cultivate. A single strike that sinks a vessel does more than remove product. It sends a warning to every trafficker that the old rules are gone. When leadership sees their million-dollar investments reduced to burning wreckage, confidence collapses. That collapse is exactly the point. The F-35 deployment also represents a strategic escalation that changes the entire balance of the war on cartels. For decades, operations focused on interdiction ships and joint patrols. This new phase introduces the same tools once reserved for battlefields in the Middle East. Precision strikes, stealth monitoring, and real-time intelligence create an asymmetry so vast that cartel strategies cannot keep pace. For cartel leaders, accustomed to exploiting loopholes and corruption, there are suddenly fewer places to hide. Some argue that the show of force risks driving traffickers deeper underground, making them harder to track. There is truth in that, but unpredictability works both ways. The more splintered the cartels become, the less capable they are of mounting coordinated operations. Fragmentation breeds vulnerability. Rivals turn on each other. Logistical errors multiply, and the cost of doing business skyrockets. Every dollar wasted on survival is a dollar not spent on expansion. What makes this moment historic is the shift in perception. Cartel bosses who once flaunted power with impunity are now speaking in whispers, afraid of being the next target. Even recruits are beginning to hesitate, calculating whether the risk of instant annihilation outweighs the lure of easy cash. When fear replaces ambition, the recruitment pipeline begins to dry. The trajectory is clear. Cartels that once boasted of unstoppable routes now whisper about survival. The U.S. has drawn a line with overwhelming military might, and the cartels are being pushed into a corner. Whether this leads to long-term dismantling or a bloody escalation remains uncertain. But one truth is already visible. The age of unchecked cartel dominance in the Caribbean is under siege, and the sound of stealth jets overhead is rewriting the rules of their world. This takedown was just the start. The fight isn't finished. On your screen is the next video. Click the video, it opens right away, and you'll see the cartels crushed even harder.